Today I'm going to give you a quick demo of the calculated plot feature within ToolKit. Calculated plots can be added to the data log viewer. So I'm going to open a data log file, and from the data log properties window there's now an add calc button under the plot list. If I click that, it opens up the expression builder. The expression builder is a new dialog that allows you to build the expression based on available parameters that are in the data log file. The listing of available parameters is identical to the listing from the data log properties dialog. I can view it as a tree, or I can view it as a flat list. I can also search through the parameter lists with a partial name match just by typing in the search box and pressing enter. It'll search the variables by their short name if your data log file has that, or it'll search by the full parameter name. I can simply double click on the item and it'll get added as a variable, and it'll be given a unique name in the form of x1, x2, and so forth. I can also add by dragging and dropping, or by clicking on the Add Selected button, similar to the data log properties. To actually build the expression, I will have to type an expression in the box. So for now, I'm just going to type x1 using the parameter name that is given, and not the full parameter name. If I press enter, the expression evaluates and draws on the graph. So you can see a calculated plot has been added. It's given a unique name in the form of calculated plot 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. I can change that name if I want. And also all the other properties can be changed just like a regular plot. The exception is a calculated plot has an expression property, and the expression property is how you get back to the expression builder by just clicking on the dot 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 button, which brings up the expression builder. And so I can add additional plots, and I can also change the name if I don't want the name that is given. And the easiest way to do that is just double click on the name. I can put anything I want pretty much in there. And you'll notice, since I typed in a name and I already had that name in the expression, I have to also change the expression or I'll get an error. If I tried to close the dialog in this state, of course it won't let me close until the errors are resolved. So for now I'm just going to use the default names. And you can see the chart is changing real time as I'm changing things in the expression builder. So I can type in an expression between these two variables. So I'll just subtract one from the other. I can also use a whole multitude of functions that are supported. If I just click on the help button, it brings up the help with the expression builder topic already loaded, and within that topic is a listing of all the operators and functions that can be used. So this is the full list of functions that are supported, and I'm going to use square root, so let's try that one. Okay, so the waveform didn't really change, but you can see the numbers on the scale changed. If I choose to an expression where there's maybe an error in the calculation, so I think this might result in an error. Okay, so some of the data calculates properly, other parts of the data results in an error, and whenever that happens, ToolKit will show an error icon at that point. So in this case the value went negative, and you can't take the square root of a negative number. And if you hover over the icon, you can see what the error is. So it calculates where it can, and where it can't, it shows an error until it can calculate again. Okay, I'll go back in there and have to correct my expression. So this is still resulting in a negative number. In this case, the calculation of the whole thing is negative. So now I'm back to what I had before. If I change the expression to be a Boolean result, then the scale will automatically change. So if I say if the value is greater than 0.47, for instance, so you can see the scale changed and it's a Boolean result. So that happens automatically. And the scale, if it's set to auto scale, as the calculations values change, when you change the expression, the scale will automatically change so that you can see the complete waveform on the chart. I said before, you can change the variable name. If you change the name to an invalid name, such as the name of a function, that's not allowed. You'll get an error, and of course you can't close if there's an error. You cannot actually change to an existing name, so you cannot have two variables with the same name. Or you'll get an error. Okay, so if you don't want a variable any longer, you can just click on the delete variable. Now, of course, that results in an error on the expression because the x2 value is no longer available, so I have to change my expression. Okay, and if I want to just clear out the expression altogether, I can just click the delete expression. You can close the window if there is no expression defined, but of course nothing will show on the graph. So you can also overlay two different data logs in the data log viewer. So I can either do that from the properties or from the overlay button on the viewer. So I'm just going to do it from here. And they show up as two different data log sources. If I want to add or create, an expression with parameters from both data log sources, I can do that from the expression builder. So far I've just been adding from the binary sequential 1 log file, but now that I've overlaid this binary log file, I get a separate listing, and I can add those as parameter variables as well. So let's see what that does. All right, so that looks interesting, but it's a little noisy, so I can also filter parameter variables, and that's done by editing the tau column, which is just a time constant, to a lag filter. If I double click in that field, I can type in the constant, and it'll apply the constant to each variable before it's used in the calculation. So that looks better. I can also edit the tau column by just clicking on the edit button, and what that does is it cycles between the name and the time constant column. And once I type in the value that I want, I just have to press enter to commit that value. So that's it for the overview of the calculated plot feature.